The four corporates. Hello!
Hey, the
Hello,
results.
mate.
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
All right. Well, I'm better after your technical difficulties.
I have had some I've been plagued by technical difficulties this morning, but I'm here with you now.
Apologise to the audience, Dave. You know, you've kept them waiting.
I'm very sorry for keeping you waiting, and I know you've all got busy days and busy weeks ahead of you. I know that some of you are on holiday, and some of you only pretending to be on holiday.
No, sliding there at me. I saw what you. Or was that Rich? Actually, I don't know. You did what really sly people do all the time. When you couldn't hear me before, you did that. I think it's you pointing thing, and you made me reboot, knowing it was your own laptop.
Well, my computer seemed to indicate that I was perfect. Perfect. You heard right. Perfect. Yeah.
What was that? One of those R. Simon things you used to have? What Anyway, matey, you asked me how my holiday was.
Simon, tell us all about your holiday in a not quite an exotic location, but it is definitely different.
It's one made for me. I realised just how German I am when I was sat there with my currywurst sausage, my ample stomach and Teutonic features. It was Munich's a great city. I mean, obviously, Oktoberfest is the mecca for pissheads, isn't it? But it's actually just great to go to. Not least to give the children a little bit of history for once, rather than shiny swimming pools and everything else there.
Oh, really? Has anything interesting happened in modern history in Germany?
No, not for a while, thank God. Fingers crossed. No, I tried to keep the Basil Fawlty jokes down to a minimum. Did you see the Hitler? Did you see my neo-Nazi lion though that I spotted on the tour?
No.
This has no context. It's probably appalling for an audio podcast. I will send you the photo later on and post it in the Facebook group of literally a Nazi lion that was just quite happily, brazenly stood there doing a Nazi salute, which I thought was a bit out of order.
I think it is a little bit out of order. Other than that, you returned from Germany in one piece.
I did a bucket list thing. So what was it? What would it have been now? 3 days ago, I was floating around 8 kilometers of river in Munich city centre. So they've got this bizarre thing there where I was just watching this main river, and the locals started just throwing themselves into it. I thought, okay, I know that what's going on in Russia is pretty bad at the moment, but it wasn't getting to that stage. And it's called the English Gardens, which are wonderful. They're matched with Kew Gardens for a bit of history. But the locals just throw themselves in and then float off down the river. So never been one for not obviously throwing my oar in with something ridiculous. I gave it a go.
I bet your kids love that.
They weren't there. They'd already been little bastards, and so I'd lost them by that stage.
So what kind of man goes on a family holiday without his family?
No, they were there. They weren't there I'd managed to slip them by that stage.
So whilst you've been away, strange things have been going on in the property industry. And I have to tell you, if I'm reading this correct, the news isn't looking overly jolly.
No. 5 quarter recessions was the last headline I read on the subject that most people seem to be kind of predicting for us.
So on this, I know we're great with our predictions.
Yeah.
We very clearly saw the pandemic coming, didn't we?
Yep.
Before anybody else did.
Yeah, we helped to spread it, and not least with our wonderful Michelle Gallagher, my COVID buddy. We did our own bit, Dave, to get everybody immune, and I don't think you should really gloss over that.
I think you did a service to the country, and often when we were clapping on Thursday evenings for the NHS, I threw an extra clap in there for you, Simon.
You threw the clap in for me. Brilliant. That's really nice. Just on an interesting side note, isn't it? It's going to be really interesting to see what happens after all that clapping and after all those politicians said how brilliant they were. When the nurses are going to strike next month, you wait and see them get vilified in the same way.
It's really odd at the moment. It feels like a bit of a political tinderbox at the moment. You've obviously got the Conservative leadership race, which isn't going to finish, I don't think, till September the 5th.
I was good, yeah, but which year?
It feels like the worst episode of Britain's Got Talent.
It's appalling.
It's gone on forever. They're backstabbing each other to death, and then I think the loser has to sort of cozy up to the winner, don't they, and sort of say how much they're going to support them.
Yeah, but do you remember when it was David Davis, wasn't it, and Boris? Weren't they the ones there? They never seemed to be having quite the same kind of bitterness in the debate, so that it was always at the end of that you always saw them, potentially giving them a cushy roll or something like that. But the way that Rishi and Liz the Sponge have gone at each other has been quite brutal. I don't know if they are. I don't know if they. I mean, the rest of them have fallen in, haven't they? But I suppose that's the way.
You know what? I think when it comes to sort of political footballs at the moment, the issue of the economy is something that nobody can win at, really. So whoever comes in and whoever is in that top position has got months ahead of them of very hard work for.
It reminds me of the Yes Prime Minister episode, and then latterly picked up by Alan Bastard as well, where they have got to such a stage that the country is so completely fucked that they actually want to let the opposition in to deal with the whole, the whole shit show that's going on there. It's not looking great, is it, in terms of whoever's got to pick this? And you can understand from their point of view. I mean, it has been 12 years now. They can't really keep sort of. I mean, I'm amazed that the interviewers haven't been picking them up on this more in terms of you were there pretty much the whole time. You were there voting for these tax cuts, and now you're saying you never believed in them. It's like, wow.
There's a couple of obvious curveballs thrown in there. So we've got a COVID one, and we've got a Brexit one, and we've certainly got a massive Russia-Ukraine one in there as well, and just sort of general sort of market sentiment. And we've got to be so careful. So we called this correctly before, but we as an industry have to be so careful. But everybody has to be careful about not just talking us into a recession, but also just keeping the facts very, very sort of plain and very not to belittle the members of the public out there who are genuinely going to be worried about what it is they should be doing. Should they be selling right now? Will they be selling at an all-time high if they're getting out on the end of this thing? Should they be waiting later on? Will there be more opportunities? Will mortgage availability still be there? Will finance be there? So there are lots of different questions that are going on at the moment. And I think understandably, you can sort of hear that sharp intake of breath from the industry, and it's holding it right now. It's not quite sure what we're going to see in the next few weeks, but whatever it is, it doesn't look overwhelmingly positive.
But the property industry's done quite well, hasn't it? Coming out punching, and trying to tone down. I sound like Trump now going on about the mainstream media, don't I? But the mainstream media does seem determined to talk us into a recession, when actually, a lot of this, as we know, is supply side economics causing the inflationary pressures. Interestingly, actually, in those interviews, none of them have been speaking about the price of energy or anything like that, have they? And clearly, with that, I think that makes up the gas alone and makes up about half the current rate of inflation and everything else. So they're talking about, obviously, if they limit that has the ability to do it. But I think the property industry's done a pretty good level-headed, message back to people is, don't panic, Mr. Mannering. And what was he, Martin Fagg, the economist that Peter Knight always has, who's absolutely brilliant. And he talks, obviously he does other events as well. He does relocation agent, but he he is absolutely balanced in terms of that. Look, whilst the Express is talking obviously about disaster, this is literally some of these metrics are just returning to pre-COVID kind of levels after the initial bounce back, and so we shouldn't panic. But he did state that the one danger is that if we get into this cycle of negativity.
Yeah, there's just the one thing out of all of this that I'm quite happy to sort of shake off bad news and to say, okay, look, this is just news being written for Daily Mail readers, and for the rest of us, we just need to take it with a pinch of salt. But I think the one thing that seems to be universal across all media outlets, regardless of what your political viewpoint's going to be, is the fact that energy prices are going to be the thing that sting people this winter. Particularly your kind of average working families, if you like, are going to be very heavily hit on it, and businesses as well. So your local takeaway, Simon, although nobody normally sheds a tear for your local takeaway, you'd be interested to know, I spoke to one last night, and they said that their normal, regular direct debit for electricity or whatever's £1,000 a month. It's just gone up to 4,500.
Wow, it's unbelievable, isn't it? I remember.
That's a lot of chicken tikka you need to sell. A lot. I
have because my curry's in there waiting for me for breakfast from last night. They're staggering, aren't they? I remember somebody pointing out. Okay, it was on Facebook, so maybe you shouldn't. But it was a farmer talking about, if you think the prices have been bad to date, obviously with agricultural stuff and everything else, wait until these latest ones come out after they factored in obviously the increased food costs that have been needed to obviously raise the next generation of cattle, chickens and everything else there. And this is where you're going to see the next wave in the spike. So, a bit worrying that you haven't seen anything yet on that front. By the way, I do like what you've done there. You're still doing that thing, obviously, you do fantastic well, where you basically go around local restaurants trying to get a free meal on the belief that you're going to be the digital mayor.
That's me. I think being associated with their gas bill is going to do them nothing but good this month. It is just one of these things that I don't think this generation, to sound like my grandpa, this generation don't know what's hit it. But genuinely, I think a lot of younger people have never worked through a recession. They have no idea what it's like to work through a more difficult market.
And a good number will not have, whoever it is, will not have been through this inflationary kind of stagflation thing as well. That's pretty special.
I'm waiting for Sean Adams to come on and tell us that when he started out, interest rates were at 21% or something ridiculous like that. But genuinely, when I started out, I think when you look at interest rates, they were in the double figures, and a normal interest rate we're going back now pre sort of credit crunch times, was it about 7.5%, 8% at least. So we've still got historic lows in terms of the economic conditions and the sort of stuff that comes.
Everyone scrambling around though, checking to see how long their fixed mortgage are tied in for, isn't it? I know we had a good look at that as well the other night. Yeah, it's not great, is it? But on the other hand, we're quite resourceful, aren't we?
I was expecting you to put out, on the other hand, in other news, a cat got stuck in the tree this week. Well, in other news,
we've got the Eurovision, Mr. Negative.
Well, no, let's roll it back one level, because I know you're a massive footy fan. Yes. I'm not. But what do you think about the English victory in the finals that brought it home? Simon Whale, what have you got to say?
As a massive feminist, I firmly endorse it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I tell you what was really enlightening, actually, seeing the wonderful Jerry Lyons. Did you see that? And his wonderful daughter Charlotte as well. And she's obviously got she's got the bit between her teeth in terms of enjoying the game, and she'd been into it well before all the politicians have got on the back of this. And I think I'm right in saying Jerry has been and Charlotte have been to every single one of those games. And what an amazing! I mean, I'm not I'm not a fan of England per se, anyway, being obviously a chippy Liverpool fan. But seeing the Lions there, watching the Lionesses, was a wonderful thing. Actually, the fact that they got to the stadium about 14 hours before the kickoff shows you the kind of genuine excitement that it was good. It was amazing.
I think it's beautiful. I think it has encouraged a whole generation, and Charlotte probably represents that generation pretty well, both in terms of the demographic, but also people whose parents are going to encourage them to get involved in sport at a decent level, and maybe see this being. I mean, loads and loads and loads of posts after the victory from. Lots of women basically complaining, I think mostly that they weren't allowed to play football at school.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be greater access to the sport, but it all comes down to one thing, doesn't it? It comes down to money and investment in that infrastructure and investment in that game.
Famously, they can't get pitches. They can't get even those ones that are there are reserved, vast times for. I mean, that was again as a chippy anarchist, stroke socialist, champagne socialist. The thing that I was dreading more than anything, and obviously came marching towards us with inevitability, was watching the politicians desperately trying to suddenly claw any kind of, any responsibility and hang on to the coattails. There was people out there who were. I think I'm right in saying it was. Was it Nadine Dorris who had been there? She was at the ground with Ginger Spice cheering away. 6 or 7 of that England team are either gay or very pro gay rights, aren't they? And of course, Nadine had voted against. At every opportunity she had, good, the ability for marriage, and I just thought they're totally shameless. They just absolutely are incredibly shameless. And I don't know if it was it James Cleverly coming out and saying now that they have to obviously back this up as well and put the investment in. But given their ability to sort of claim things and then not deliver, I wouldn't be holding my breath, which will be a tremendous shame. And I'm probably being too negative, because I think regardless of anything now, people have woken up to it to such a big degree that it's going to happen.
I think the onus is there, not just on the system. It's not just on the schools. It's not just on the government. But it's on regular mums and dads. We've spent weeks and months and days stood out in the rain watching lads play football. It is time to put in the same amount of effort. But let's not forget, most of those younger leagues, particularly for kids, are all run by volunteer networks, and it's all the time that the parents put in. And that has got to be poured back into the girls.
You can't live off the goodwill of people doing that forever, though, can you? I mean, it is amazing, and it does seem almost endless, that ability, as Jerry was doing and Wendy, the mother, was getting behind it. But there's people like Paul Wood. I remember talking to Paul Wood from Pygott and Crone, and his daughter's an exceptional sort of swimmer. I used to revert in horror when he used to describe that 4 or 5 times a week he'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take them swimming. And it was at that point I was so glad that both of my kids were completely shit at everything. I
don't know. I don't know if it's because the Americans tend to sort of celebrate every bit of achievement a lot more than we do. But obviously, when it comes to sort of going to university or college, as they put it out there, they give massive sponsorships, don't they? And massive sort of stipends and all sorts of grants. For sport. It's a major thing, particularly when it comes to sort of American football and stuff like that. But they do seem to invest in that, and the parents again get very invested behind it. And it's a hard slog. If you want your kids to compete at any kind of level, ask Richard Durant.
Yeah.
How many times do we call Richard at night, and he's always pretty much out on a football pitch or dropping somebody off at dancing or football or whatever it is. It is a huge, that kind of like mum and dad's taxi service is responsible for getting our athletes out there. It's massive.
And that moment when we see our kids and they try to header the ball and they get it in the face and we go, yes, we're not going to have to do that sort of stuff ourselves because they're not good enough. Just going back to, the whole horror story about Alan Turing, the famous mathematician, and obviously how he was virtually won the war for us with the Enigma machine and everything else, and was obviously subsequently, targeted for being gay by the same government and committing suicide. I didn't realize the history going back, just how appalling we can be in this country. The women's game had started a long time ago. I can't remember if it was like the 1910, 1920s, and they were getting tens of thousands of people attending the games until it was actually banned by the FA. And you just think that this is like, I mean, I know that seems like a long time ago, but you just genuinely can't get your head around it, can you? Women know your place.
It's crazy. And when you hear about people sort of, there has been some very unhelpful dialogue, hasn't there, from some quarters of the male public who have either sought to jump on the bandwagon, as I'm sure some people are going to accuse us of doing today. But then you've also got some people who've been very vocal about it, and they're quite protective of their sport, which they seem to think is sort of the last vestige of male toxicity there. But I think if we're able to open it up and we're able to invest in it, it just shows you what a bit of leadership. And it is inspirational. I mean, look at it. The papers are full of it. It was quite a phenomenon.
Well, I tell you what was good anyway, even though obviously I don't, as I said, support England, but being in Germany and then moaning about dodgy decisions was absolutely, the penalty decision that was not given was a thing of beauty.
Well, let us turn our attention, if you will, to the to more recent news events. Do you want to kick off, Simon?
Well, I suppose going just vaguely linking the two back. Last week was a big week from what I could see from my iPad. Looking at the news coming in for a lot of half-year results or full-year results for the corporates, wasn't there? So, as usual, Purple Bricks got a lot of attention there. Lots of people again talking. I know that we talk about them probably too often, but talking about survival again, aren't they? In terms of what a rum set of results they really were. And I saw it again.
Well, the Purple Brick survival is obviously very much a hot topic at the moment because their results have not been great at all. But what is really strange at the moment is that you cannot move for Purple Brick's high-level employees purchasing shares like no tomorrow.
That's right. Who was the other one who bought 2.5? Was it 2.5 million?
So Paul Pindar, non-exec chairman, he had purchased 2.5 million ordinary shares. That was just last week. Literally on the same day that they announced their results, he went out and got himself a whole load of shares. And now she's done well. I say the Purple Bricks CEO Helena Marsden has purchased a right old chunk of them as well. So
is this like in that scene in Blackadder where they all march across no man's land bravely into the fire? It's a bit. I think Russell Quirk, bless him, summed that up, wasn't it? Didn't he sort of say something about you might as well have just set fire to the to a load of £50 notes, and he also raised the point. I think it was Russell talking about Axel, the company that been investing absolutely millions in them, hasn't it? It must be, there must be some very big questions going on there themselves.
With Axel Foley, whatever his name is. Yeah, I think nobody really knows why they're doing it. You would think that they would be sending the public a message. Is it enough of a message that they're buying the shares? Do they believe in the direction of the company? Are they trying to make a point? Is it that they're just trying to get in together enough shares so that they significantly can drown out that voice that has been demanding Paul Pindar basically step down? One thing's for sure is that this just seems to be one of those footnotes at the bottom of something that we all thought, and it just goes to show we all thought it would finish us off. We all thought that online estate agency had come to kill us all. And just look at it. Just look at what they're left scrabbling around with. And I think in the long term, it just proves that that model isn't sustainable. Not on that level.
No, but they'll come, famously you talk about the tech adoption wave and everything else, and the first wave, like a wave, breaks and doesn't quite make it. And then in the way that agents, after slagging off the online agents for ages, suddenly started saying, you know what, I'll have that bit of the proposition. I like all those online tools that they're using. I like the ability for landlords to be able to log in and do stuff there. And the online agents, you would imagine, everyone's going to be hybrid, aren't they, in some degree? I mean, unless you're going to be boutique in the extreme. It's just, and people have said this. I remember John Cook was asked the question and years ago was saying, well, we're all kind of online now, aren't we? Or at least hybrid. So
I think the learning curve from sort of the onlines coming into the market to us actually getting our shit together as an industry and talking positively about what we do and defending what we do, but more importantly, striving to improve what we do. Our tech adoption has been absolutely superb. So we have basically filled in a lot of the gaps that we would have had before. And what it comes down to, and I think we've all discussed this before. Somebody wants to call in. Oh yes, we've had our first request for some. We've got somebody that wants to come on the show.
Yeah, but you need to do some background. That could be any.
I don't know who that is. That could be anyone. If it's Simon's mum, will you please call in? But our tech adoption's been great, and what it comes down to, and this is the message really, that good prop tech and good processes and really upping your game leads to a much higher level of customer experience and customer satisfaction, and that is the difference between this industry now and this industry sort of 5 years ago.
They had a couple of free hits, didn't they? They had absolutely no history of failure, so that's always wonderful, isn't it? It's a bit like if you started a new political party, just to take it back. You've got nothing to be judged against, have you? So all of the commisery stuff absolutely just was taken as being the truth and everything else. And so it took an amazing amount of time for that to filter out across dinner tables where people were saying, well, actually, I didn't manage to sell my home. That money, we got appalling service and everything else. And the other thing was the investment bubble, whatever else people think about them, that ability for the Bruces and then latterly, for Purple Bricks to keep raising that investor money that paid for the TV advertising, which clearly did deliver a huge amount of leads at one stage, was a virtuous cycle for a long period of time. What you've highlighted is the minute that those two started to break down, it got very messy very quickly. And I'm not linking this back to Brexit, which I always do.
I think losing their leadership in terms of the strength of that team at the top there, and I don't agree with their methods. I don't agree with how they built that business, and I still to this day are going to have problems with their position long term. I don't think we can just forget what they did so quickly. And I know famously, and I'm trying to just stay as impartial as possible, but when you read comments on industry sort of blogs and different feeds and social media, and you just sort of take agent sentiment, it's clear that we're still licking our wounds. We're not ready to just rehabilitate people that spent a lot of money trying to sort of undermine what it was that we did. And I know that they see things very differently nowadays. So there's that. But it's clear to me that there is a correlation between the lack of uptake on their new venture and the old one, and that to me is very interesting, and I think that may be a lesson to everybody. This industry tends to have a pretty good memory of what's happened, and I think
people like you never let us forget.
We're not bitter, but you know what I mean. Christian Byfield. The biggest mistake online ever made was targeting price. It's hard to undercut an industry that averages 16% if, as tech does in so many sectors, you grow through being super cheap. The moment you have to increase your prices, you cannibalize your own business.
Spot on. That man knows a bit, doesn't he? I'll say this. He may go as a rampaging Viking at every bash, but actually he's very switched on, and I couldn't agree more. If you go for, and it was interesting, wasn't it, that actually you talk about cannibalization. Purple Bricks completely cannibalized that the online market, didn't it? I mean, they literally became almost all conquering at the expense, and not to go all Highlander, and there can only be one. But when you are in that volume play, that's normally what happens, isn't it? You tend to, if there is any way of success, and what I'm going to be fascinated to see now is those have gone, almost hold my pint with Strike and just saying, what, charge a fee? Absolutely not. Let's just go, and it is interesting in a lot of northern areas, Strikers, it seems to me, talking to people, has largely replaced Purple Bricks as the agent of choice, online agent of choice.
Yeah, and you know what? Whether you pay your agent their fee for doing their job, or you don't pay them anything, but they add on loads of stuff like, their conveyancing is going to help to foot the bill, financial services referrals, and everything else that comes along with it. You've got referral businesses out there that basically that's their model. That's how they make money. And such is life. We've got, within our industry, we have industry organizations that make a tremendous amount of money year on year, loads and loads and loads, by aligning themselves with a select group of suppliers at the end of the day. And nobody, and I don't believe there is a strict vetting process. I don't believe that people are working together to ensure that it's only the very best products that are reaching their marketplace. So I think the lesson is there to all of us, that both as the public, when you're choosing an agent, and both as an agent, when you're choosing perhaps a supplier or people that give you advice, are there people out there like us, for instance, who are very openly saying, yes, we hope to earn a referral fee, but that won't dictate whether or not we're going to sort of advise you to go with supplier A or supplier B? Or are you going to stick with what you've got?
You've got to look, Dave, as well. You've got to, and it is a really good thing, because actually, eventually, it always catches up with you, doesn't it? So, famously, we make, I think it is over 90% of the recommendations we make are to people that we get no referral fee at all. But if we just chase those ones that we did get a referral fee from, and it was the wrong choice, then we wouldn't get people coming back to us, would we? So you can't have your cake and eat it as a famous.
We've understood that you cannot build a business on, and especially just as I've said now, we do know that agents talk. We know that it's a very small world, our world of agency, and more importantly, we have a memory. So if you wrong somebody in this industry, they're going to remember it forever and a day, and they don't drop it. So
that's awkward. You're making me feel awkward now. Is that right? People have memories.
People have great memories, and people have cameras as well. They just take photos of everything nowadays. It's very, very upsetting. But I think equally though, we're good.
No, I was going to say you finished.
No, I was going to say we're also very good to sort of recognise and remember the good things that happen and the people that help us, and we are getting much better about talking about our own good news as well.
Spot on. Let's do a few shout-outs. We've said hello to the wonderful Megan and Michelle. Hello, ladies. Wonderful to see you again. Who else we got? We got generic Facebook user who gave us feminist, which of course is a bit handmaid's tale, but I agree with you. The wonderful Christian Byfield. Hello there. No problems being late. Just put the apple on the table as we go. Thank you, generic Facebook user, for making the point about what a useful chat it is. And Jim Parker, Scotland's finest. And there, good hello to yourself as well. And we have just been joined as well by a state agency royalty. We have Chris, who makes the point, why do we focus on purple bricks when they only took a maximum of 5 to 6% of the market in 2016-17? PS Strike have a market share for new listings in the north of England of 3.3% compared to purple bricks at 3.2%, Redrace 2.43%, and Hunters at 2.16%.
I think the reason that people tend to focus on, I think the reason that people tend to focus on purple bricks is precisely what we've just been saying, is that we all remember this pantomime villain that is purple bricks because they were so pronounced in how they tried to sort of take down an industry, if you like, and undermine agents' abilities to charge what we thought were fair fees. But it kept us on our toes.
Yeah. But what I do think is right, and we had this chat the other day, wasn't it? Whilst everyone was focused, absolutely solidly focused on online, what was happening in the background was the rise of auctions and, that becoming a steady player rising beyond. Am I right in thinking that's risen up to about 8 or 9% of the market now in terms of transactions? Chris will be able to tell us, I'm sure, more than that.
So what's very interesting about auctions, and we'll be releasing some great auction content this week that we filmed with the lovely and quite handsome, I've got to say, Richard Webb of Patterson's Auctions. But other auction providers are available out there, let me tell you. But I would love to see auction really kind of brought in-house with UK agents and really embraced, because I think it's got some really interesting applications in a harder market. Yeah. And I also think that if we were better at not seeing auction as an enemy and actually seeing it as a tool that we can integrate into our offering, I actually think maybe we'll end up doing a better job for our sellers overall by giving them another option, giving them something with certainty. I'm quite impressed with it.
100%, and I think you're absolutely right. In the way we spoke about before, where people had to take a them and us kind of thing about online, that's exactly the same case with auctions, isn't it? And look, I think if we're honest, we're kind of we're behind the wave on this because it's already happening anyway, isn't it? I mean, there's so many people doing it successfully, but the good news is that there is no glass ceiling on this per se for the moment, is there?
No, I think it's all down to the way that agents adopt it and the way that they publicize it and the education piece that needs to go out to members of the public. So we played this game, didn't we, with Richard, where we got him to close his eyes and imagine what a perfect auction property looks like. And inevitably you come up with that sort of, oh, it's a 2 up, 2 down in some miserable pocket of the world. It's been boarded up. Even the dogs walk around in pairs on that street. It's that kind of thing, and that's not necessarily the case. There are some really sort of high-end auction properties that have done tremendously well, and so it's just interesting. You can either see it as a threat, as a lot of us have done over the years, or you can actually see it as another feather in your cap.
I won't apologise for repeating myself again. I keep saying when I spoke to the main players, Marshall White and the Jealous Craigs in Australia, in Melbourne, where obviously auctions is massively done down that whole eastern seaboard, they said to us, you act as if we have always done auctions, or auctions as they say over there, as if that was the only thing we ever did. It took 20 to 30 years to educate the marketplace there, but anyone who has seen that market working would have a hard job disagreeing that it was anything other than a really smooth operation.
this is an interesting comment from the Viking, but he says auction fees piss all over selling fees. It raises an interesting question for agents struggling to raise their fees. How are auctions succeeding? And I think what we forget sometimes is that, yes, at auctions, buyers do pick up sometimes a quite a lump of charges that they have to pay, or sometimes all of the charges, just depending on how that auction is run and what the conditions are. But the point is, those buyers, I have spoken to one more recently, tell me that they have been competing in a market where they're turning up for every viewing, and there's somewhere between sort of 10 and 20 people looking at it. Everything's going to best and finals, and they feel that at auction that they've at least got a fighting chance of securing it when it says it's sold. And they see
best and final just looks like dodgy, smoky deals, doesn't it? Smoky rooms deals.
Exactly. Now, the conversation you're not allowed to have, because it's not ethical, is if somebody was effectively paying you to reserve that property, would you then tell them what the highest bid is, because you'd be doing the right job for your client, because you'd be getting them at the highest price possible? And effectively, auction allows all of that to be extremely transparent. And you can see all the bids that have come in. You know exactly where it's sort of resting. And I know there've been sort of rumors for years that auctioneers used to bounce offers off the wall and oh, we're getting a telephone bid here from Mr. Whale, 2 million. But the
fact that I actually have done that at an auction is neither here nor there. But
but I think what's interesting is, I think the majority of the buyers that are going to auction, the reason that they're going there is that they want certainty. They understand actually that is perhaps a marketplace that they will have to pay a certain amount of fees to secure a property, but it's theirs, it's done. They will walk away from that auction on the day one step closer to legal ownership of that property.
It's spot on, yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with any more. It's interesting with Christian up there, actually. Just made me think, why don't, and you be able to tell this, because obviously I know nothing about this industry, even after having been in it for the best part of 3 or 4 decades, whatever it is why don't they do auctions for rental properties as well? Surely that would be, given the often increased demand, the short period of time that it goes on, surely that would be the quickest and best ways to generate the most accurate market value for rent.
Wow, this might be a great prop tech startup. If you can come up with a ridiculous sounding name, I think we're in with a chance here.
Renty auction. Auction.
So my natural reaction to you saying that we should perhaps auction off rental properties has led to this. It's exactly the same as Christian's reaction. Hell no, God no, never.
Why? No, that's not good enough.
Well, as Megan is trying to say, in this market, it sometimes feels like we do. So I suppose that if agents are being open and honest and they are doing the best for their client, then that thorough marketing process at the beginning is designed to sort of see and listen and hear from everybody that wants a
thorough marketing. Put it on Rightmove. Bullshit.
I would like to think that the average property gets a hell of a lot of exposure. But the point is this, that when you finally do let it, you are in most cases letting that property out to somebody who's made an offer that could be actually higher than what you're asking. So in effect, yeah, Megan's right. You're running a mini auction yourself, aren't you?
But if you're doing it without, if you're doing auction light, why not do it properly? Would be my argument.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see how far Simon Wales auctioning for. I just think in a market like we've got at the moment, and again, I think we need to sort of all remember this, that right now, whilst we have been able to let and sell anything we get our hands on, you can afford to be greedy. You can afford to push the rents higher. You can afford to get record prices for your sellers and for your vendors. That is not going to feel necessarily and sweet in 6 months' time.
The new subsidiary of Kerfuffle, Swagger, is our new rental auctions company. Which is going to take. Luckily, no one watches this, Dave. So we've managed to keep the IP secret from the world.
Here we go. So this is anecdotal. Out in the field, we're letting properties in 24 to 48 hours and seeing premiums of 10% plus. There is no time to promote for auction. I reckon that Christian could do it, Tom Panos style, stood outside the property on the pavement.
Yeah.
Just to bypass us.
Yeah. Maybe not in his Viking outfit.
Megan, sweetheart. Oh, I'm not sure that's right because it's not just about money with rentals. So I'm hoping that Megan is referring.
Were you doing an impression of Megan there, or was that you?
Oh, I don't know. I read that comment and I'm like, it's always about the money. When they say it's not about the money, it's always about the money. But I think that there are some considerations that the agents take on board when they're selecting a tenant. It's who's likely to sort of be a decent tenant, who's going to look after the property, are they credit worthy, all of those things. But landlords are very motivated by money, and so sometimes it does.
Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed that they're not in this just for the charitable venture?
More news. What else have you got for me that isn't doom and gloom?
Just rustle through those because we didn't even finish that point. So the LSL obviously were blaming their results, a lot of their results, on the turnaround time of the pipeline, which was interesting, obviously echoing what a lot of people were saying. I saw that Connells were down, was it about 14% or something like that? But probably not unexpected. I mean, obviously, it's going to be really interesting to see how that whole digestion of Countrywide, because it's kind of like just almost been forgotten, that, hasn't it? That this absolute behemoth there now, Connells and Countrywide, is there together. But
it is. It's a hell of a lot of volume, and I speak to a lot of agents who still don't see those kind of mainstream corporates as their competition.
I thought it was really interesting when Countrywide were going through the depths of obviously what was going on, and on Property Industry, I never a place known for its generosity or charity. There were lots of people coming out with, I think it's really sad to see, style comments. You know, lots of people obviously gone through the training there. They see the corporates, whatever else they do, as giving good training to and a recruitment ground for some of their best staff. And you know that's when the company was in a bad state, when all the independents, or a large number of the independents, were saying, "Yeah, actually, it's like kicking someone when they're down, isn't it?"
It's I think at the end of the day, company culture, which is something that we all go on about a lot, and I know that when you go for your away days with people like the Property Academy, etc., it's very much. And when we went to visit Moneypenny that time with the ICG group, I think these, company culture is very much on the menu. It's almost the first thing that big successful companies tend to sort of knuckle down and do. And I'm not sure those corporates have ever got company culture right in a way that really nurtures successive generations of leaders, the neg of tomorrow becoming the branch manager, et cetera. But there doesn't seem to be that nurturing process there, and there doesn't seem to be that care. It's always been a sort of a sausage machine. It's how much can you shove in one end and what are you going to get out the other.
As long as I've been in the industry, Connells have always outperformed the rest, haven't they? They've always, whatever else they've done, they've seemed to run a really tight ship there in terms of, not maybe making the most daring investments or changes, but always steering a really careful route through everything else, while the others might not. I'll tell you one other one, though. The last one of the four was Property Franchise Group, obviously Martin and Co. And they've acquired Hunters, and they had some great figures, as you probably expect, obviously with them focused as where they are. So obviously Sample's doing a good job over there.
Christian seems to sort of back that up. We've never viewed the big boys as competition. They are so different to us in so many ways, and this is really interesting. If a client really wants them, they're not right for us, effectively. So
and nothing better to piss off your competition by saying they're not competition.
Megan, who has come out the other side of LSLI. LSLI gave me the best training and foundations for my career, but independent life gave me my voice and passion. What's work without that?
PropTech gave you excuses. There you go.
It's in development there. It'll be along soon.
One more listed. In other stuff, there's a great story. I don't know if anyone caught it last week. We can't do it justice today, but did you see the 6 of the most bizarre landlord insurance claims you've ever heard?
Give us the top 3.
Okay, wait. Oh no, I can't do the top though. I'll have to send them out there. But there was one here that was the baffling business of the bath and the battering ram. It was the middle of the night when a couple was startled by the sound of their next door neighbour crying out for help. Fearing for her life and unable to gain access to the property, they called the police, who took the decision to break down the door with a battering ram to answer the tenant's panicked cries as quickly as possible. Once inside, they were stunned to find the tenant unharmed, but somehow wedged in the bathtub. No laughs at me here. Stuck and unable to free her without causing further distress, the fire service had to be called in order to use their skills to free the woman from her tub. Luckily, she suffered no serious injuries. The outcome, Total Landlord Insurance accepted the landlord's claim, totaling $1,200 to have the door replaced due to threat of life of the tenant. And there's another 5 or 6 of them that are actually just quite good.
There's almost happy accidents where the landlord gets a payout in the end. But equally, I bet Megan and Christian can tell you tons of landlord claims that in the past would seem on paper an absolute no-brainer that the insurance companies would pay out, and that it becomes very difficult.
We need to do an expose, where they sort of mask the face again, they pixelate it. And like in the old days with the IRA, where they used to make them have helium voices, we should do an estate agent's confession hour.
We'll definitely do that. What has Whaley got in his diary this week? Who are you seeing? Which of the great and good are you rubbing shoulders with?
Do you know what? I actually have no idea. Let's have a look here. Got a panel spotlight with Brief Your Market. I've got a fairly free week actually. Looking at this.
Well, we like to take it easy on you. Peak holiday seasons.
I've got a really good interview actually. Or I know a really good interview with Loop, the CRM. So my old protege. Obviously Mark Bevan and Ollie Gleave, obviously they're doing some really interesting stuff on the CRM front, so I'll be interested to see what's going on there.
Awesome. Right, well, stay safe out there in agency world. Stay away from negative news articles. When you're being asked for a quote from the local press, try and keep it real, guys. Try and sort of give the public some hope. Talk about the people that are still moving. Talk about the transactions that are going through, and talk about all the reasons why people still need to move house, because that's really not going anywhere. And stay away from Tory politics, for God's sake, please.
And if not, make it up. Have a good week, guys. Cheerio.